you don't feel well, stop and talk to somebody, get help. Don't just power through.
Welcome to another episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, hosted by myself, Chris Hall, the founder of the Burnt Chef Project. This week's guest is Kirk Haworth, who joins me to talk about his experiences with Lyme disease and also the impact that had on his mental and physical health long term. It's a really interesting chat and it's well worth sticking around to the end. It does go on a little bit longer than usual, but we discuss so many different things. I think it's well worth listening to. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for the next 6 months, Lamb Weston, who have been exemplary in supporting the Burnt Chef project since the get-go. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to keep providing stigma-breaking content. Now, before we get going, here's a short word from our sponsors.
Lamb Weston are your partner in potatoes. We're a leading global frozen potato manufacturing business with a wealth of experience in offering a portfolio of high-end and quality products on a consistent basis. We supply the pub, casual dining, QSR sectors. We believe in wellbeing through potatoes, and we are very proud to support the Burnt Chef project, here to offer our support and help for those that need it and any solutions that you need for you and your business.
Hello.
Kirk, how's it going?
All right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
No worries.
It's good to catch up. I've been anticipating this chat. I wanted to, because I know that you and I sort of touched base originally when we did a chat with Sat Baines a little while ago.
Yeah.
Ages ago now. Lockdown, what was that? 1.0?
Yeah, first one, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, mate. So much has changed since then, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? It's insane. I feel like I'm in like some like trip or something, something like that's not happening outside of my body. Some days I'm like happening, like people like so like can't believe each other, and it's mad, isn't it? It's just like inhumane.
Yeah, I mean, it's brought out the best in people, but it's also brought out the worst at the same time. Like, it's it's amazing how much or how little disregard there is for other fellow human beings who are going through the same thing at the moment. Hey. Yeah,
of course. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a roller coaster, and like you said, there is so many positives that have come out of it, but as well. I mean, there's definitely been struggles for everybody. I think that's humane, isn't it? That I don't think anyone's gone through these years. It's been a year, right, and not had some tough weeks or days in that period.
How are you faring up over this time? Because I take it place has been. I mean, have you been doing takeaways or anything like that at all?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think it's. I mean, we all have to do this, but I don't think there's many chefs out there working in, that our arena of cooking that wants to do delivery stuff and wants to do all this stuff. But, at the end of the day, you have to it's survival of the fittest, and you have to just do what you bloody, I've had a few tantrums. I don't want to do this. I just want to cook for guests and see them smile and stuff like that. But, we just got to do what we can to survive, haven't we?
Yeah, it's about pivoting. But I suppose from me and from the conversations I've been having from other people, and it's one that I'll pose to you, is have you seen any, perhaps, whether it's inefficiencies in your previous model before lockdown, or have you seen any ways of improving efficiencies moving forward when we eventually get out of this hellhole?
Yeah, I mean, with my health battles before all this, I had a big awakening then to what's important in life and gratitude and these things. And I think many people will be having that now, maybe. So it's definitely like finding a balance and I've had a lot of like, where do you want to be? Where's your perfect, where are you going to thrive the most? I think, especially chefs, we are so passionate, we are so driven, and especially when you're in London, as us chefs, we all have egos. It's good or bad. We all have every human has an ego, and you want to drive to be the best, and you want to succeed and all these things. But if you're home, if you're not thriving in your environment where you are personally, then no matter how much you achieve in that restaurant where you are, then no matter how many, whatever it is you want, accolades or just being the best, inside you're not going to be happy. If you're not feeling good and all these things. So yeah, I've just kind of been like tapping into that basically and trying to find, okay, if the next 10 years this is where I'm going to spend my life, then where do I want to be? Is it London? And stuff like that, basically.
Yeah, it's that paradigm shift or perception tilt that this pandemic has provided to many people, and it's one thing that we hear a lot of is the fact of, I don't necessarily want to be in hospitality, I don't want to work in catering anymore. But I don't think it's necessarily wanting to leave the industry. I think it's wanting to leave the particular way that they're working currently. Because we all a lot of us get in this industry or stay in this industry for the passion of food and for the passion of service and everything else. And that's you can't change. It's like a love. But also at the same time, I think that people are now looking at their lifestyles and going, well, if my passion is sacrificing my health and my family relationships, then is this just a general hospitality brush that we tar with everything? Or is it a case, well, actually, we can say to people, stay in hospitality, but go here or try this?
Yeah, definitely. I think there will be like every chef will probably have the day where like, fuck this, I'm not doing it anymore or whatever. But we all love it so much. Like, our industry is incredible. I think you've seen like the support, the people in it, the way the creative side of people that have adapted in this times is mind blowing. I think, one of very few industries that can adapt and just, have the strength to just keep going and do whatever they can to do what they love.
Yeah, the resilience has been unfathomable. It's been absolutely
insane. It's insane.
And that's the thing. And I think there's hope for hospitality. I think certainly once this pandemic, starts to die down, and once we get the brakes released to trade as normal, I think that hospitality as an industry will have a fantastic 12 to 24 months. But, it's not to say that everyone's going to be on board with that, because some people perhaps won't be able to make it. But I think that there is hope, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, and we're at the cusp of quite a radical change, I think, within hospitality as well, in terms of how we view it as an industry compared to others.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be super interesting. I think what you will see though is when things do kind of start opening again or whatever, you're going to see so much camaraderie between chefs. There's going to be so many collaborations to try and raise money. There's going to be so much coming together of people trying to help people. I definitely see that. So many people want to give in this industry for the better good, and I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. The community and the family side of hospitality is starting to show, isn't it? Really, more so than ever.
Yeah, it's very, very special. It's I couldn't do anything else. It's very special.
So, Kirk, take us back a little bit, because I'm intrigued to understand your particular focus is on nutrition, and obviously how that also benefits well-being and mental health, and through your own experiences. So do you mind just explaining a little bit about how sort of that came to be and what your experience of that was?
Yeah, so I'll try and cut this quite short. It's been a long journey. I'm still on that journey, so I'm constantly learning. Basically, I was, from 15, I was just so embedded in work. Like I sacrificed everything. Like I would not even stop for 1 second to like pick up something to eat and put it in my mouth, because I just wanted to be ready for service or whatever. And when you look back on that, it's all right when you have wisdom now, when you get older and you've gone through a journey like I have, and you go, how stupid, why didn't I do that? But you didn't know, and you can't live in regret and all these things. But basically, when I look back, even before my chronic Lyme diagnosis, I always kind of struggle with my health, even from when a very young age, from like 9 or 10. I always got run down. I always got ulcers. And I always just went to a doctor and they just said, oh, it's stress or whatever. And they give you a prescription, right? And off you go. Anyway, so fast forward into the cooking time. So yeah, I did an apprenticeship with my dad when I was 16 till I was like 20, did some stages in between. And then I made a big move to come to London at 19. 16 to 19, yeah. So I came to London at 19, which is very, very young, rewind like 10, 12 years ago, because kitchens were a lot harder then, you know, we have developed incredibly since then. And I found it very, very hard. I came from being in the north, being surrounded by like up north, like everyone's, it's just a very different atmosphere it was back then. And then when you come to London as a 19-year-old and you're getting on the tube and no one looks at you and no one speaks, you know, up north you jump on a bus and you speak to the granny who you've never met before. And them things you really don't take for granted. And you come to London and I just felt as in some like different country. And I think it is compared to, you know, in the north, it's especially where I was in a little village, you know, in Lancashire, where everybody knows everyone and everyone's mates and all that. And you come to London and this competitive nature. Anyway, so I started working at the Square, and I worked. Yeah, we were working a lot. I learned a lot, but I was just. I'll be honest, like I struggled, and I think anyone that worked with me then could probably see that. I always just felt very ill. I struggle with the hours, but I just pushed on and you just got on with it. And that mentality of a chef, you know, you don't show that you're struggling, you just push on. And I had a bit of extra pressure because it's like, oh, your dad's, you know, you're Nigel Haworth's son and this sort of thing. But anyway, I just got on with it, kept my mouth shut and just kept working. Anyway, I did just under a year there and then I left and I was pretty run down. So I came back up north, for a few weeks, and then I was like, I'm not done with. I just didn't feel like I was done with London and achieved what I wanted to achieve. And when I look back, that's probably again ego. And I then started working for Shane Osborne at Pied à Terre, which I did just under 2 years for, and I loved it. We had amazing time. Again, just worked crazy hours, but you love it. You know, you work, you sleep, and you do your washing, and that's all it was back then. You know, and you just eat a doner kebab at 3 a.m. on the way home on a Saturday night, you know. And that's when people look at me now and look at my food and look at how I speak. They don't know I can relate to everybody because I've been the opposite. I've been the polar opposite to who I am now.
Yeah.
You know, I used to live off Red Bulls. I used to drink coffee. You know, I used to smash a few Baroccas and work 18 hours a day and think that was cool. Do you know what I mean? I've done it. I've done that and I've seen it. And I've learned the hard way because after that, basically, I was pretty, you know, I'd done 3 years in London then. And anyone that does 3 years in London, whether you're super strong or not, it takes its toll. It's very intense, you know, 2 Michelin star level. And it's very stressful on the body. But I loved it. I learned loads. So after that, I spent a short time at the French Laundry with Thomas Keller. I did a 3-month stage, and then after that, I learned a lot there, but I just didn't. It wasn't the place that I wanted to kind of spend the next few years. A few friends in Australia was like, "Come to Australia, Kurt. You know, you can work good hours, and you can, you know, have a bit of a life." So I was like, "Okay, sod it. I'll go there for a year. You know, I'll have a bit of fun, but also work in a good kitchen." So I moved over there and started working for Mark Best. I don't know if you know Mark Best at Mark Restaurant. He's an incredible character. We had a tiny little team, like 5 or 6 of us. Like we started at 11 o'clock, finished around 12. We only did lunch service twice a week, which a lot of English restaurants are doing now.
Yeah.
Back like 7 years ago, it was like, wow, that's so cool. Do you know what I mean? And then we all sat down for staff lunch, which everybody does now, but 7-8 years ago they didn't.
Yeah.
some did, and as more people implemented it in the restaurants, a lot more people started to do it, and it's an amazing thing. And it just felt, I was like, wow. Anyway, I met my girlfriend at the time and ended up staying, and I worked at Key for a further 2 years. But towards the end of my time at Morgue, I was asleep in the middle of the night, and I woke up and my hand literally like tripled in size and was bright red. And it was, my fingers were huge. Anyway, I went to the doctors, and they just said, I think it's a spider bite. Give me 7 days antibiotics and off you go, sort of thing. So I did that, and I just carried on living my normal life. And then I was severely into running. I used to run like 30 kilometers a week, again, pushing my body. It was the typical Kirk way. So I moved, after this, I started to get severe symptoms, like very severe, but nobody could see it, only I could feel it, which was a very lonely place to be. And again, going back 7 years ago, there was not much about like invisible illness, mental health. If you look fine, you're fine.
Yeah.
And I started just having like the most chronic headaches ever. And it wasn't like, oh, you've got a bit of an headache for an hour, I'll take some ibuprofen and it's gone, it doesn't come back. This was just from morning till night. And then every few days I get a new symptom. So they just start piling on, where like some days I couldn't stop weeing. So I would be going to the bathroom like 14 times a day. And you can imagine that in the kitchen where you feel embarrassed because people think, oh, he's Skyping work or whatever. But I was like, what is wrong with me? And you're trying to like hide it from people because you're embarrassed. And then I started getting like memory loss. So I started to like make mistakes that I would never make before. And I tried to, the only way I can describe what Lyme feels like is that there's like a ghost inside your body, and it kind of controls you and your movements and how you do things, and make like basically like messes you up. It's very hard to explain, and it's so debilitating. So you'll be running a pass, and it's like anything. If you do your job and you've trained at a very high level for many years, and you start making mistakes that you never made before, you start going, hold on, like once or twice it's fine because we all make mistakes, but you start doing the same things. If I was running the pass, I'd get 4 plates out if I was going on a table of 5. And then I'd read out the checks and I couldn't remember them. And I'd do the orders, and one of the chefs would pass me my orders, and I'd forget the order. I'd forget to put them in, or I'd only read out half of them on the phone, and I'd be like, this isn't me. This isn't. Do you know what I mean? And these sort of things, and it started getting worse and worse and worse. And I got to a point where I never forget it. I woke up one morning, and I was just in the most severe pain I have ever imagined in my life. I mean, I couldn't even put any pressure on my legs. It was like having the worst. It was like having a hangover times by 1,000,000.
Oh, mate.
And it just never went. And by this point, I'd moved. I was at Key Restaurant. I moved then because I in between all this, I was going to so many doctors. I was having all these scans on my brain. There's nothing wrong with you. So you think you're going crazy because I'm like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe it's just stress then. And you just keep going, and it's so hard to just keep going anyway. So I was at Key then, and I never forget it. I used to cover my legs in heat rub, and I used to wrap them up with bandages, and I used to just go to work. And I don't know how I did it, because I could hardly walk up the stairs. I remember like the Key changing rooms from the floor downwards. I used to have to hold the railings to like get up the stairs.
Yeah, you'd be in service for God knows how long.
I'd be doing service. Yeah. Oh God. And so I was doing all this, and I was at Key. I was doing the same things, like forgetting stuff and all this stuff. And then you've got like 18-year-old commies looking at someone that's very experienced like myself at that time, making mistakes that even they wouldn't make, and then it becomes really embarrassing. So by this point, it was like I was getting so ill that my dad was like, Kurt, you're going to have to come home. You can't keep messing around. You know, these doctors were just not taking me seriously. Anyway, fast forward, I came home. We spent so much time doctor to doctor. So over like 56 doctors, something crazy like this. Jesus. Specialists, like spent so much money, like crazy, over like 40 grand. And this is what people don't understand. Like Lyme is huge, but it's not on the mainstream. Like there are millions suffering with Lyme, millions and millions, and you get no support, no help, no financial support. It's not recognised on the NHS apart from if you get it early, you get antibiotics, and that's kind of it. Especially chronic Lyme disease, not acknowledged. So I came home, and I was like, at this point, I didn't know what I had, so I was like, right, I have to still do things. I have to still, try, even though I was in pain every day. I was like, okay. And then I saw an article where SAT just launched a 4-day-a-week thing. So I was like, maybe I could manage that 4 days, and I've got 3 days to rest. And I was still in denial by this point how bad I was, though, because I didn't want to quit cooking. My dad was like trying to get me to like stop for years, and I didn't listen to him. And then so I went to SATs and I tried, but and SAT was amazing to me, but it got so bad that I was going to A&E. He doesn't even know this, but because I was at this point didn't know what I had, so still dealing with a lot of stuff inside. But I was going to A&E in Nottingham like every single night after work at 2 a.m. and having brain scans and having all these scans and saying like there's something wrong with me. I was going to the doctors on my days off, and they used to laugh at me saying, "Oh, it's him again. You've got a new symptom, have you?" Because my symptoms would just keep coming on and migrate. So I'd get like severe groin pain sometimes. So then you're worried and start going, "Shit, like what's wrong with my groin now?
Yeah.
What's wrong?" And then I'd be like googling Alzheimer's disease, like because that's what it felt like, and then like my fatigue was so bad, so I'd just like be so tired that like you just feel like you've never slept, you haven't rested, you never feel like, you just don't feel good ever. And it's so hard because when you say those words, people then think of it as negative. But if you are experiencing those things and you're just saying how you feel, then it can't be negative because it's just how someone feels.
Yeah.
It's not like you're moaning about your life, like, oh, I haven't got a car, I haven't got this, I haven't got an house. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very different. You're just saying like how bad I feel inside. So I did 9 months with SAT, and I just said to him, and SAT even put me on less hours. So I did like the breakfast shift, and I worked till like 6 o'clock because my legs were giving way. I couldn't literally hardly like. It got so bad that my balance was really bad. So I'd like walk through a door, but I'd bang the sides. And it sounds mental. You're probably like listening to this and going, "This can't be." It can't, like, it's that bad. But you constantly as well, your brain's constantly trying to like not do it because obviously you don't want people to like laugh at you or whatever, or you're clumsy or whatever. But it's not you're clumsy, it's this thing inside you, like, so you just drop things or you just do silly things that you would never ever do.
Must have been so isolating, like to continually go to the doctors and say there's something wrong. I'm not myself here, and not only having to deal with all the physical exhaustion and the stress and the pain that you're going through, but also having to deal with the mental exhaustion and people telling you, "No, you're fine," or "You're a hypochondriac," or "Just go away and come back again in 7 days if it's better." Like I can't even begin to imagine how hard that must have been.
Oh yeah, and they tell you you're depressed, and I'm like, no, I'm not fucking depressed, but I want to go to work and not be in agony. I love my job. I'm so grateful, like, for the little things I have in life. Like, all I want to do is go to work and cook and be normal. That's all I want. And I want to be able to go on a run on my day off, and I want to be able to feel good. That's all I flipping want. Do you know what I mean? Oh God. So yeah, it got so bad, and the last straw was, and I don't even think Sat knows this either, but I fell asleep in my car when I was driving to one of the breakfast shifts, and I drove it into the back of I was only going slow. I was going like 10 mile an hour in like a little traffic thing. But I dozed off kind of thing, and I hit the back of this big lorry. And I was late for work then, but I was too embarrassed to say like what really happened. So I just took it that I was late for work. And that was the final straw where I was like, right, I can't carry on anymore. I was just in so much struggle. So I said to Sat, I was like, I can't do it anymore. I'm gonna have to leave. So I left, and I was like, my job now is to find out what the hell is wrong with me. And it was really tough, because I had to move back in with my parents. And I had to take a year out, and I had to, and I just tried to speak to as many people as I could, join forums, research, and it was actually a friend of a friend that watched the news, and there's someone talking about Lyme disease, and they rang me and said, "You need to turn the news on, listen to this guy. He sounds exactly like what you're talking about." And as soon as I googled it, I knew straight away. I didn't need any doctor to tell me. I didn't know. I knew. When your heart just knows, your intuition knows, and I just knew. And then I went and got tested, and the test on NHS is 95% negative. And this is another reason why I've actually stopped speaking out for the last few years, just because I kind of wanted to detach this label of this chef with Lyme disease. I don't think it's good for the subconscious mind. But I used to do a lot. I do quite a bit, but not as much as I used to because of that reason. And I wanted to just focus on me and my healing and stuff. And I think when you carry on talking about it, you're then attached to that illness. And I've never really wanted that.
You define yourself by it, don't you? Which is a common thing. And it's the same with mental illness. People say I'm depressed or but depression is something that in many cases you can get over and it may never come back. And so, but if you keep referring to yourself in that way, like, "Oh, I'm a depressed person," then you basically signed yourself off until you can get over that.
Exactly, and then you're kind of giving yourself some sort of label. And I do believe, I've done a lot of mind therapy and stuff where once you do start giving yourself that label, it's harder to heal because the brain and the body are so connected. But yeah, basically the test is 95% negative. So there's so many people getting tested with so many symptoms like me, who the doctors are saying, your Lyme disease test is negative, so there's nothing wrong with you. So, you just have to carry on your life. And there's so many people that just say okay to that. And I've never been an okay man. I've never been a follower. I've always challenged the narrative. I've just always been that disruptor that just, hold on a minute. I've always just questioned things a little bit more. And I was like, I'm not having it. So I started doing more research. I started to read that the NHS test is blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I found a private health clinic in Hertfordshire called Breakspear Medical, and they are a Lyme clinic. And this is when I had a huge awakening of, number one, how expensive it is, and number two, how serious it is. When I got tested there, and they send your test results to America and Germany. They're proper Lyme labs, and they cost £3,000 just for tests. So you can just imagine, like, number one, how many people can't afford that, which I was lucky that I had savings at that time and I had family support. So I got tested and they came back, and I was so high in the main infection, which is Borrelia. But there's over hundreds of co-infections that come with Lyme disease the longer you have it. And chronic Lyme disease is not recognised on the NHS. If you go to a GP and say you got chronic Lyme disease, they'll laugh at you. They'll literally, because they don't know anything about it. So chronic is when you have suffered with it for many, many years and you haven't treated it because you didn't know what it was. So I've been by this point, I'm 4 years down the road and I haven't treated anything. I didn't know what it was. So then it turns chronic. So that's when it's harder to get. And what it does is it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So that answers the questions about the memory stuff.
Right.
And this is a very interesting thing, right? So they've done autopsy on Alzheimer's, people that died of Alzheimer's, right? And 95% of those people tested positive for Lyme, Borrelia spirochetes in the brain.
Where does that come from?
So the thing is, with Lyme, it can come from spiders, ticks. They're even saying mosquitoes now, fleas.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, I could talk for months about Lyme. It's such it's such a rabbit hole of information that's not out there. But yeah, and so you can, and the thing is, there will be millions of, well, it's fact, they say that a lot of the population will have Lyme in their body, right? We all have viruses, bad ones, like just like bacteria. It depends how your immune system is functioning, because that's dependent on whether these things get in or not.
Yeah.
So you could get bitten, right, on holiday when you're a 3-year-old with your parents, and then when you're 30, you could go through like a really emotional, traumatic divorce, let's say, and you become severely depressed, and you stop eating, and your immune system comes down, and then boom, that Lyme can attack you.
It sits there dormant.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that doctors will not say, because they'll say, "Oh, you need to have proof that you've got a bite," but that's the thing. You can get bitten, and then you can get your symptoms 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later. And it's proof. I know loads of people that this has happened to. It's like a maze.
So effectively, I mean, I've had tick bites before in the past. I live in the country, so even a couple of years ago, and the bloody thing got stuck in me. But so there's a potential that, and not, it's not to say that every bite that you get carries Lyme's. It's
Exactly,
especially
that's true. Also,
it tends to come from livestock, and specifically things like deer, if they've been attached to other animals at some stage. Is that correct in saying?
And deer parks are the worst places.
Yeah, but it's effectively then, if we were to, I mean, I don't know much, and I'm sure you'll come on to explaining about how to manage Lyme and why you've gone down the route in terms of nutrition like you have. But is there a treatment for Lyme that we could like suddenly take that would, you could go to the doctor and say, look, I might not have Lyme's disease, I've been bitten in the past, could you treat me for X, Y, and Z, or would they just do the same as they did to you and sort of say, go away?
Well, if you don't have any symptoms, then there isn't really point treating, really. Unless you say you got tested and you're 100% had it. In terms of treatment, like I say, if you get Lyme early, so say you get bitten today and you go to the doctors tomorrow, you can get antibiotics, which we've been trying. I work with a few Lyme disease charities. We've been trying to change this for like 3 years, because it's only 2 to 4 weeks. Normally they just give you 2 weeks. Now you need 6 weeks. You need a minimum of 6 weeks to get that Borrelia, out of control. And that's when you've been bitten like very, very soon. And you've got to treat it very, very quick, very, very quick, because it attacks your whole body so fast. In terms of chronic Lyme disease, there are loads of treatments out there, all that cost a lot of money. But you don't know if you're going to get better or not. So you're like a guinea pig, basically. So there's huge risks. Like I did a treatment in Cyprus called ozone therapy, which at this point was like a lot of people getting better from it. And at this point, I was in a really bad place. Like I remember like ringing my sister saying like, I'm ready to go. Like I didn't want to live anymore. And I went and did a treatment in Cyprus called ozone therapy. Which cost me £10,000, which was for a month. And then after, when I came back, I ended up worse. So I'd not only spent that money, but I took the mental risk, I took the physical risk. I'd put all that effort in and sacrifice to then, I was so ill after that treatment for a good 18 months. I was having seizures at home. I was so suicidal, I couldn't even like walk over a bridge outside because I just thought about jumping. It was really, really, really difficult.
I can't even begin to imagine. I mean, everyone's had like a cold or a flu or a virus, and sometimes even hangovers. Sometimes you think, God, this is never going to end. But then you wake up the next day and you feel slightly better, and then slowly you get better and better. Yeah. But to have that feeling and
drink a Lucozade and you feel better.
Take a couple of paracetamol and then the edge comes off of it. But to wake up feeling already 100 times worse and not feeling any better for that period of time, mate, I want to say I'm sorry, but it's no good to anyone, is it really?
No, and it's no, I've never been, and again, probably because I'm so stubborn, and you have to, it took me years to actually let people help me and stuff, because I was so like, you don't want, especially, I think it's a bit of being a chef in it. You don't want sympathy, you don't want people to like feel sorry for you, and so I've never been after that. But I just, when I realised what it was, and I think that was like 5 years ago, and I spoke out about it basically. I think I did a post on Facebook, and it was very scary then. I mean, it's so good now. So many people were speaking out to struggle because what we have to do, and that can help so many people. Like 6 years ago, it was very right on a Facebook post how it's felt for the last 4 years or whatever. And it was amazing how many people like came out and supported me, or chefs in Australia like, okay, God, I knew that there was something wrong with you, like I saw it in your eyes or whatever, and you should have just spoke to me and stuff like that. So yeah, that was kind of like the first time I started speaking out about it. And then when I moved, so I've kind of like gone forward in terms of the journey, because basically when I moved in with my dad, I started, and I found out what it was when I was at this clinic in Hertfordshire. Their treatment is IV antibiotics for a whole month, 5 days a week, and it's £6,000 a month. And I just got a vibe there that something didn't feel right. And it was just the money, the money, it was just like, yeah, it didn't sit right with me anyway. So I said to them, which was very brave back then, because I didn't know anything about Lyme. They were all like forcing it on me, like, basically, if you don't take this treatment, you're gonna potentially die and all this stuff. Didn't say those words, but like trying to put the pressure on in terms of taking this treatment. Anyway, I just said, I'm going to go away and I'm going to think about it. Because everything had been so quick. Like that week, I just found out I had Lyme, and I drove down and I got the tests and all that. So I started to join Facebook groups, and I started to like go, oh my God, read these stories, and it was just like mine. And I just like, all of a sudden, I'm like, from being so alone for 6 years, going, oh my God, there are so many people like me.
Yeah, community.
Like 30, 40,000 people just in London, on these Facebook groups talking about how they're suffering and what they're doing and how, like all this stuff. Anyway, so I started to ask lots of questions, started to speak to people, and I started to read about antibiotics, and the antibiotics smashing the gut microbiome, the good bacteria.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then I got a friend of a friend who was in Scotland, who she had Lyme, and she was like, Kirk, if I were you, I'd try natural stuff first, and then you can always do that. But, money wise as well, you better, you better, trying the other things first, build your immune system up and see how you react. So that's when I started to research food. And again, like I say, this is why I'm not a preachy food person, because I've been that guy that's ate chicken wings at 2 a.m. and I've done all that shit. But I started to look at food. I'm like, oh my God, why has no one said anything like this? Why have doctors never in 4 years talked to me about what I'm putting in my body?
Yeah.
I started to like research these, because my body was highly inflamed. Started to research like sugar, for instance. I mean, if you look at sugar on the body, it's so bad. And on the mind, like it's so bad. It's the most addictive. I think they've done tests on it. Like it's the most addictive drug in the world, like next to cocaine or heroin, I think it is. And it's so addictive because it's just in our system from when we're young, and we just get addicted without knowing.
I was going to say, sorry, I must admit from personal experience, you know what it's like at Christmas when you get, personally, you get surrounded by chocolate, right? I might not ever touch like a high level of sugar or chocolate ever, but come Christmas, chocolate comes and you're like, oh yeah, it's okay. By the end of Christmas, you're like, fuck, I could really do with a chocolate bar right now, or I could do with something sweet.
Yeah.
But once
it's got you.
It's got you. Once it's got you, that's it. And you can see why people are drinking like bottles of Coke and all this sort of stuff on a regular basis, because it is. It's an or naturally occurring sugars are obviously not, naturally occurring from fruit, for example. But like man-made sugars are It's the devil's food.
Yeah, it is, and I do get it. Again as well, not preachy. I mean, everyone. If you go out for dinner, like some of the best desserts in the world, well, most of the best desserts in the world are made from sugar, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I get it. It's all in all this stuff. Diet's all in. You've got to just have balance. You shouldn't be smashing loads of sugar every night. But if you have, a dessert on a Saturday night, then that's it's God. You've got to live, haven't you? At the same time. So I do get that. But basically, I just opened up a whole can of worms for me, and I started to like research all these things, like dairy and the mucus on the body, and all these things. How red meat was causing inflammation for my blood type, and all these things that I was like, wow, this is like. And I started to get I was like, I'm going to turn this into a positive, and it's going to become. And I say this to people, like, especially when you're a chef, you give your whole body. Everything, your passion, your energy, your love, everything to that plate of food, to somebody else, that beautiful plate of food to somebody else. That's what we do as cooks, right? And then that person that's cooking that food gets nothing.
Yeah.
So I reversed that energy and was like, I'm gonna treat my body like I'm cooking for someone else. So I was living with my dad then. I just started and I never juiced before then, I just started juicing loads. I started to read about how important it is to have less pesticides on food, which I never knew before, and how important organic is and all these sort of things. And I was just like making soups without adding butter. And I was like, wow, this is delicious. I was cooking like cabbage and coconut oil. I was like, wow, different sort of delicious, because since I've been a cook, it's classical in the majority of restaurants, you'll turn that piece of fish or turn that piece of cabbage, you'll whack a load of butter in and you'll baste it. And it's a special thing as a chef, isn't it? We can all relate to it. I'm not saying it's not delicious, because it is. Yeah. But I just found a sense of different direction in cooking and a different deliciousness. And that's where I kind of started to explore that sort of food. And at this point I stopped. I didn't drink a load then anyway, but I completely quit alcohol. And I started doing a herbal therapy through a practitioner. And I started to do a thing called bioresonance, which basically treats pathogens on a frequency level. It's very, very interesting. And I saw a guy in Liverpool like that, and he was curing dogs with Lyme disease on this machine.
This is through as in frequency.
Go on, sorry.
As in sound, because I'm familiar with the concept of the fact that, whether or not it's widely accepted, but we as human beings, our atoms resonate at a certain frequency, and we're made up of atoms, right? So we are vibrating. We're energy. And I mean, we once we get onto this subject, you can kiss goodbye to the next 3 hours, because it is actually very interesting, and some people might believe it's hocus pocus. But so the frequency therapy you're talking about, is it sound based or literally just like frequency waves?
It's frequency waves. So all pathogens have frequencies. I mean, I've got one at home here, and I've basically a booklet, and I can treat anything on it. So I can put in my frequency machine number 312, and it can treat cold sores. It can treat Lyme disease. It can treat depression. It can treat all sorts of things. And then what they do is by this point, I got 70% better in 9 months. I was running again. If you talk to people, like you said, people will think, but it's bullshit or whatever. But when you see people, life change through these machines, and with your own eyes. Like, I saw a lady in Liverpool that was in a wheelchair. She'd been so ill, and this machine gave her her life back. Then you're ignorant if you don't give it a go, or you're ignorant if you say, it's hocus pocus or it's bullshit. Because I believe if I see evidence, then it's there's something there.
Yeah. And even if it was hocus pocus, it's working.
Yeah, and so what if it and the thing is, not one thing will work for everybody. That's the thing, So people, for instance, some people with Lyme, it doesn't work. It's never worked for them. So then they'll go on Facebook and go, it's a lot of bullshit. It doesn't work or whatever. but that's just their experience.
Yeah, and everyone
It's
is
the same.
different. It's like diets as well, isn't it? Like one diet may
Exactly.
work for one person, but it's not going to work necessarily for someone else. Someone might be more tolerant to carbs. Someone might be less tolerant to carbs. And every single body, whilst we're all
100%.
built biologically the same way, there's minuscule differences in our makeup and our genetics.
100%. And if we look at Western medicine, and I've nothing against a lot of it, but because some things are amazing, antibiotics for certain things, they've been game changers. But when you look at how they treat people, they don't treat individuals. They got a one trick pill, and they give it to hundreds of thousands and millions of people with all different genetics, all different immune systems, all different blood types, all different emotional traumas, all these different things, but they're not taken into account. So when you start to question these things, like you just said, it's the same. It's the same with medicine as it is with diet. It's the same, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same like intolerances. Again, that's something. Or what am I talking about? Allergies. Again, not everyone has the same allergy. I'm particularly allergic to things like dust, and when you start sneezing, when you get to a dusty house, people are like, you're a fanny. What's going on? But for me,
it's really bad.
Yeah, my eyes water, my head starts pounding, and it's just dust. It's something that's around everywhere. But as you say, it's unique to everyone, and there's as equal as the illness or the affliction is unique. Also, there is a unique preventative cause and effect for it.
Yeah, and I just think and I mean, I was very probably I mean, when I made that decision to, because when I look now with what I know, it probably seems easy, but I think one of the big things for me is we are so reliant on somebody else to fix us. It's, and I'm not saying that that's on all things, antidepressants have helped so many people, probably saved their lives or whatever else, but so many people, we don't want to take control back. And when I found all these years of these doctors telling me how I feel and how I'm fine and how I'm that, and I'm thinking, this guy's never met me before, and I'm giving him full control and full yes or no's to what I do when I knew how ill I was inside.
Yeah. So
take control back and be my own manager of my own health. And that's basically what I did. And it was scary, really scary, especially when you got especially when your parents from a different generation, they're like, listen to the doctor, do what he says. Oh, better go to this appointment. But I was getting so angry. I mean, I remember the last appointment I came, and I was at SATS and I came to London. I was so angry. I was crying in the office because you just don't get it. You don't realize how bad it is. And that was the end where I was like, Dad, I had to fight my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm done here. I'm done. I've spent enough time. They're not getting me anywhere. Every time I go to these specialists, they haven't passed the information on to the new specialist, and you have to tell your whole story again, which, as you can imagine, this is a very short version of it. Takes hours when they want to know dates, times, everything, how it happened, in what order. And it was just causing me so much stress. But basically when I got so much better, my friend in Australia booked me a flight to come and see him, and we did a Lyme dinner to raise money for Lyme sufferers in Australia. And I felt like I was strong enough to do it. But at this point, I didn't know that much about Lyme. I was only like 9 months into my journey. So I kind of was like, oh, I can never get worse now or whatever. Me being me, stubborn Kirk. My dad told me not to fly to Australia. Anyway, I flew to Australia, and I was so ill. I spent the whole 3 weeks in Australia in bed. All my symptoms came back like 3 times as worse. My mate had to spoon feed me in bed. I couldn't literally lift my arms up. Oh, God. So we spent the whole 3 weeks in Australia trying to get me strong enough to fly back. So my mates were like getting me massages and booking me whatever they can to see these therapists and all this stuff just to get me strong enough so I could fly back. I flew back, and then it happened again, but even worse. I spent like 6 months bedbound then. My dad had to like carry me from the bed into the car. I couldn't move my legs. And that's basically when I booked the Cyprus thing, because I was so bad. And that's when I was really suicidal, because I'd done all that work. I'd spent a whole year of getting better. And I was like, yes, I'm getting somewhere. And that's when I was just like, oh my, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
So I did the Cyprus thing, and I came back, and then, yeah, I'd spent about 18 months severely ill. And then since then, I've been so scared to then try another treatment like that. Then I've just kind of been working on myself and going back to the diet, going back to the things that I'd done before, and trying to manage it more now until something more significant that I would say, okay, I'll risk trying that. But at the moment, there isn't one of those. So yeah, I'm just in the phase now where I manage it. I still deal with a lot of pain, and the brain fogs come back and stuff like that. But I just kind of, it's a full trying to work on myself as much as I can, and try and keep positive, basically.
Mate, I mean, speechless, which is a rarity for me. Like, I half expected you to sort of finish that with, yes, and this was the be all and end all, and this is how I'm now better and I'm back to my normal self. But you're still managing this on a, perhaps not as severe as it was back then, but you're still managing it on a daily basis.
Yeah. It's and I say, I make it look like it's nothing, but if say I give my day-to-day symptoms with someone that's never had it before, they wouldn't know what's hit them. But because you've dealt with so much for 7 years, you become strong enough to be able to deal with it. You have to, otherwise you don't. You're just in a dark place the whole time.
Resilience.
So mental strength is just like, you have to be. Yeah, it's non-stop. You just have to keep believing you're gonna get full better. Keep doing what you can. Keep doing those things to keep positive, and yeah, that's it. I'm constantly treating myself, constantly reading, constantly try. Like, I'm starting a parasite protocol in at the end of this month, which is a 6 weeks protocol. So that will be pretty intense, and I'm hoping that will give me some leverage and some symptom relief. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And
I hope I haven't rabbled on too much.
No, not. I mean, mate, honestly, it's been interesting to hear, because I'm familiar with Lyme's purely on the basis that if you get a target come up, then you should go and see a doctor, and and those sort of signs. But no one ever explains to you the chronic side of it, and no one explains the journey and the mental, emotional and financial distress that you have to go through just to be able to take it seriously. And still, there's no one out there who says this here will make you better, use this. It's a case of like borrowing things from various different sources and learning as much as you can. So
yeah, and you're constantly gambling. You're gambling your money all the time.
It's madness. And I know that I've been looking, because you started as a Chef's Wellness, yes?
Yeah.
About, what was that, a year and a half ago? Or was that longer now?
Yeah, a year and about 18 months. It was just getting booming and just getting really special when this pandemic started. So I was pretty good. But yeah, that's why I set it up. Is if we talk more, we can help more. And if I have seen someone that really helped me, or I know something that could maybe help someone else, then they could be in that room and it could change their life. Me just going, oh, maybe try this machine. Oh my God, it's like helping me so much, Kirk. That's all it can be. And I think similar to what you're doing with these podcasts and your work is, if we all have a story, we all have a voice, and we've all struggled with something in our life. And if we can share that struggle and it can change someone else's life, then we should all do it. We should all speak more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the crux though, isn't it? It's being able to, as an industry which is historically extremely stoic and, very masculine, whether you're male or female within this industry, it's about breaking down those barriers. And even now, like you and I talk about our journeys quite openly because we want to encourage others to feel comfortable to do the same. But it's people who message and go, oh, you're so courageous being able to speak openly. I'd never do that. And the stigma and the shame attached to just showing any sign of weakness, not necessarily with mental illness, is so strong within the industry that there's still a lot of work to do. And the more people who can share their journeys, the bigger the collective, and it soon outweighs the ones who perhaps don't feel comfortable. It's building a community, isn't it?
Yeah, and when it comes to, like I said before, when it comes to mental health, there's minimal on the mainstream information about all these things that can affect it, and when I started, my mates up north used to think I was crazy because I used to come out like, oh, I've read about this or whatever, and some of it I said 5 years ago is becoming it's happened, and it's true, just certain things. And all my mates like, Kirk, you need to write a blog about this. Nobody knows about this stuff. And that's why I was like, I can't be bothered writing a blog. But that's basically why I started Chef's Wellness, because it's a platform to share things, and ask questions like, okay, so mental health and chronic illness has gone through the roof in the last 10 years. So why has that happened? Not, okay, I've got this issue, go and get a drug. Why has it happened? And can we change certain things to alleviate that? We know that environments, for instance, if you live by the ocean, for instance, there's been millions of studies. You live by the ocean where there's less radiation from Wi-Fi and stuff like that, have way less anxiety than you do if you live in a city, and less stress.
Yeah, but the thing I find complicated about mental illness is that there's no one quick fix. Like, I speak to business owners and large hotel chains, and they say, right, we've identified mental health as an issue within our business. How are you going to fix it? And I'm like, it could be 50 different things that's causing that within the business, and it might be minor tweaks to some and major tweaks to the others. But it's like, we live in a culture now that's fast-paced, it's toxic, our diet is wrong, we value extrinsic motivation more than intrinsic, and for those who are unfamiliar, extrinsic is how many likes have I got on Facebook, what's my watch look like, how fast is my car going, how big is my house, how good do I look, how many accolades have I got, whereas intrinsic is all about how you feel and what makes a difference to you, like how much can you learn, do you enjoy your creativity, can you get in flow states. And all of these things, they may sound inconsequential on their own, but put together, when you're not eating right, you're within environments that perhaps aren't, we're breathing in more pollution, we're living with things like radiation, we're not looking after ourselves mentally because we're focusing on the wrong things. We're so far removed from where we were 30,000 years ago. We are the furthest away from the human beings that we're meant to be in order to be healthy and fulfilled.
Yeah.
That is there any wonder? And it's fighting against all of this and going back to simpler times, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but technology is gonna, it's only gonna get more prevalent, and that does scare me a little bit, because there are incredible positives from social media and technology and stuff, but there are some very dark negatives as well, and some people just can't handle it, it's how we manage that, and again, looking at where you thrive as an individual and finding that place, I think, of where you thrive. Definitely.
And
go on.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes there is no quick fix, but you have to try these things. Like, I don't know, for me, social media, I rely upon social media to drive the message and drive the communication of the business and to connect with more people. And it's a necessary evil, because I can honestly, hand on heart, say that if it wasn't for the Burnt Chef Project, I would not be on social media. It completely and utterly ruins my mental health because I feel like it owns me. And that's not just the main cause. It's also the fact that, like, similarly to yourself, I'm addicted to work. I'll go easily from 6 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, drinking only a minute amount of water, plenty of coffee, and not eating, because I have to be providing the best value, and I don't want to put it down. But then 2 or 3 days of that, that's all it takes. 3 days of working like that, and I am a broken person. And then I have to stop and pull back. But, it's about identifying these unhealthy habits within yourself. And it could just be like, is it caffeine? Or it could be, am I taking drugs, drinking regularly, having late nights, and eating fried chicken all the time? It's different for everyone.
Yeah, and I think, God, I mean, if there's any message, anybody that's listening to this, my biggest message to people is the word called prevention. Like, when you're healthy, you take so much for granted, like so much. I mean, you can have everything, right? You can have the best cars, the biggest mansion, you can have a 3 Michelin-star restaurant, whatever you want. But if you're unhealthy inside, you're never going to be happy. And if you look after yourself while you're healthy, that's the best thing you can do. So I think so many people get healthy, all right, and it's 3 nights a week they order takeaways or whatever. That's not. Eventually, it'll catch up with you, and it's pessimistic to say, but it will. It'll get you. You can't keep abusing your body, and it won't get you back, because it will do. And it got me very early, and I ignored it for many years, and it got me early. And I don't want other people to go into dark places before they act. And I think that's what the majority of us do, don't you? If you listen to a lot of stories, a lot of people that suffered, they push themselves to absolute suicidal thoughts and in that dark place before they have to pull themselves out. And you don't have to get there if you just stay on top of yourself. I'm not saying don't have fun, but just try and have a few things. And I think discipline and willpower is a very hard thing in today's society, isn't it?
It's
very, even if you just say you love coffee, but try and do a week without coffee and see if you can do it.
Yeah, I must admit, I went to caffeine free, but then even still, caffeine or reduced caffeine or whatever it might be. But when you're doing freshly ground coffee, you can still drink enough of that caffeine free stuff, you'll still get caffeine in it. But so one thing that's just popped into my head, and it's something that I was always told by my parents when I was younger, is one is prevention is better than cure, which you've already said, but also, is it the law of physics? So for every action, there's an equal reaction. And if you apply that to things like, for example, not looking after yourself, then at some stage it's going to come and get you back, in the same way that if you push against a wall, it'll push you, that action will push you back. And I think that if people start to, even if you're writing down on a daily basis, like an inventory, and saying, right, what is my healthy actions for the day and what are my unhealthy actions? And then start tracking how those unhealthy actions impact you over the long term. I've always toyed with the idea of doing like a 2-week experiment on myself to completely and utterly just do everything unhealthy for 2 weeks. Just and then document it like day by day. But my wife,
I don't think you last 2 weeks.
No, I don't think so. I genuinely 4 days, 4 days, 5 days. But I think what scares me is not the damage to my physical health, but what scares me is I will end up with mental illness, just because of the way I'm living, and it's whether or not I'm able to fight myself back out of it, still to be able to provide help to people.
I mean, I think people don't as well. People don't believe. I mean, they are more now, but I mean, a lot of people don't believe in the power of what you put in your body, the power of food. They'd rather eat shit and take the medication than give it, go, right, okay, I'm going to stop drinking for a month. I'm going to put everything in my body that's amazing. I'm going to drink 2 liters of water. I'm going to take out coffee. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to quit that for a month. I'm going to be strict. I'm going to see if I feel better. Because it's so much easier just to take a pill, isn't it?
It's a society we live in.
And I know it takes so much effort and discipline to change your lifestyle. But I mean, that's the only thing that worries me about this lockdown. I think, 1 and 2, we kind of, I think we dealt with. I think this third one's really took its toll on a lot of people. And I think, I just hope that we don't get into a trap of, just getting down and then eating takeaways and stuff, because that fuels the downness. I think, it's like anything, you feel whatever you eat, you feel, don't you? So yeah, it's just about balancing that in these times, I think.
I agree. I mean, the one thing that fills me full of sort of confidence is obviously we launched the Get Active Challenge on Monday to tour 30 of Michelin star restaurants around the country virtually. So
Wow.
the whole purpose of that was to raise £10,000 because I want to launch. Well, I am launching on the 1st of February. I've already committed. It's going to cost 10 grand, but it's a free text-based service. So it's done by Shout, but it will be specifically for the hospitality industry.
Wow,
So
that's
that
amazing.
whether you're in crisis or you just want someone to talk to, you can text this service, and 24 hours a day you've got trained counsellors. But the point of this is that the Get Active Challenge was to encourage people to get up, get moving in the hardest time of the year, in the most stressful situation we find ourselves in as a world.
In the world ever.
Yeah, and just get people moving whilst raising money. And I've been blown away with the amount of people. So we've now got 75 people who are covering these 3,500 kilometers with us, right? And the responses from people about, this is getting me moving. I feel much better. I'm so glad this is here. And it's that motivation.
Yeah.
And it's just a small thing. It could be going for a kilometer or 2 kilometer walk, but the impact and the community that it's building is
it's
it's
huge.
amazing.
I've, throughout the first 1 and 2 lockdown, I was okay. This last one, I'll be honest, I've struggled a bit the last few weeks, and I've just implemented, I go, as soon as I wake up now, no phone, I get out the door, I go for a walk, I come back, I have a shower, and then I sit down, and then I start looking at my work, and then I look at my phone, and then before bed at 8 o'clock at night, I'll go for a walk again for about half an hour, and I'll come back, and that's I've implemented that because I was getting defeated by those demons, and you've got to fight them. We all have them, no matter how everyone, different people have them with different severities, and that's really helped me, definitely. And a walk before I go to bed at night, it's really helped, actually.
It helps with the digestion as well, doesn't it? It helps everything.
Just breathing in fresh air and God, and just thinking about God, life, and just breathing it all out, and telling yourself everything's going to be okay, and these things. Because the thing is, right now, it's just so much. I think that's what causes a lot of anxiety. It's just so much is unknown, isn't it? We haven't got any clear messages. We haven't got any certainty, and it's that will affect people. And those chefs, we are physical creatures, aren't we? We are creatives. We walk in a kitchen, and we're in a kitchen with all these chefs in front of house people, and we hug people, and we connect, and we're so passionate, and that's just all of a sudden been stripped. That's naturally going to affect everybody in a different way.
Yeah, it's. I think you summarised it beautifully. It's not just the unknown, but it's also the unfamiliarity of this sedentary life that no one is familiar with. But I mean, hopefully, having listened to this talk today, there might be some people who are inspired now to actually, rather than create menus for spring. I mean, I was chatting to Sat the other day, and we were just laughing about how whether or not asparagus will even catch the asparagus season because it's starting earlier and earlier each year. Perhaps these people now will spend a bit of time in designing themselves a 3-course menu that is healthy and nutritious, and not full of sugar or sodium, or and perhaps spend a bit of time designing your own personal menu for you and your family to provide you with a bit of creative drive, I guess.
Yeah. And if you're a chef, especially, I mean, I did it yesterday, and I was feeling a bit crappy, and I was like, right, I'm getting up, and I'm going to just make something. I'm going to have an idea, and I'm going to make something. And after I did it, I felt so much better. I think making something, and that just, put some music on, and just cooking is therapy. I think we've kind of, in intense kitchen, but it's all stressful and stuff like that. It shouldn't be stressful, and we don't need to make it stressful. It can be absolutely incredible therapy. It can be, cooking and being in kitchens. I mean, it is. It's so creative. You can switch off from everything, can't you? And just focus on that, whether you're filleting something or cutting something beautifully with a new knife, or making a new pastry twirl. There's so much stuff you can do. And I think once you've got something to show that you've done something, that definitely helps mental health, I think.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, there's a book called Flow by a guy called Daniel Pink. If you get an opportunity, it's an audio book and normal reading book, but it's called Flow, and it's about the concept of being creative and getting into what's called a flow state, where you lose track of time and you enjoy what you're doing and you're creating something, is so not just therapeutic but beneficial for your well-being. And it's about, you know, using the skills that we've got now as an industry and getting into those flow states at home in an environment where you don't have the time pressures and everything else on yourself, and you're creating and you know, providing a benefit to you both physically and mentally, and to others and like family, you know.
That's amazing. I haven't read that book. I'll have to get it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to read. Yeah, I'm trying to read more. Actually, I'm crap at it because I've got such I'm not good at just sitting down and doing nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a chef's curse, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not good at. Me and my sister runs a business with me, and I am just not the person that can sit on a computer and like smash out loads of emails and write out. You know, I'm just not that person. I'm not that sit down studious person. Luckily, she is, so it works well. But I mean, I've had to do quite a bit in these lockdowns. But yeah, it's it's just not what I'm designed for. I don't think.
No, people learn in different ways as well, don't they? You either learn through audio, through visual, or through doing. The exact terminology escapes me, but I personally, like, I consume probably, I don't know, between a book and 2 books a week, but I do it through audio, and I'll do it whilst I'm walking, or I'll do it whilst I'm doing stuff. And for me, the information sits in my head, but if I was to read that on page, it go in one ear, out the other, and I'd read that page 4 times because I'd forget where I was.
Yeah. Is there an app you use for that?
Yeah, so I use Spotify for podcasts and stuff because there's a lot of decent podcasts about self-development and well-being.
Yeah.
So there's
one you recommend?
Yeah, Diary of a CEO is quite a good one. It's done by a guy called Stephen Bartlett, and he used to own a company called Social Chain, and he talks about his experiences of being a business owner and mental health, and just really just goes to detail on himself, an analysis of himself. And there's another one called the High Performance Podcast, and they talk to people like, you know, Johnny Wilkinson, and Johnny Wilkinson talks about, you know, the type. Yeah, and if you've read his autobiography, you know, he's very similarly to sort of chef. He's like, yeah, it consumed me. Everything was being the best rugby player that I possibly could be, but actually, you know, on seeing it from the other side of the glass, perhaps that wasn't the best move. Another book, if you're looking on Audible, so one that I'm reading at the moment is Jordan Peterson, although he hasn't got a great reputation because he's a psychologist, but he tends to upset people.
Yeah, he's quite strong with his opinions, isn't he?
He bases his opinions on clinical studies, and
I like his stuff.
I find him fascinating. So there's one called 12 Steps. But if anyone's looking at perhaps learning more about alternative solutions to mental illness, the thing that got me on my journey was Johann Hari, who wrote a book called Lost Connections, and you can get it on Audible. But Johann Hari was a Guardian reporter. He got discredited for some reason, but don't let that put you off. And he wrote a book. He wrote a book called Lost Connections, and it was about the 9 lost connections that we have in society nowadays that potentially cause mental illness. So he struggled with depression, much like myself, from a very young age, and he was given antidepressants.
Yeah.
And every time he went back to the doctor saying, I'm still feeling depressed, they would up his dose, to the point where it's just becoming unsustainable, and you're gaining weight and you're not feeling great about yourself and you become lethargic. And so he went on a 40,000-mile journey around the world to establish depression in different cultures and what the cures were for them. And the way the book's written, and I won't spoil it for you by telling you all the stories, but in the end, he came up with the conclusion that has been backed by some science, and there's an approach called the Human Givens approach that really echoes this. But he came up with, there are 9 different reasons for depression and anxiety and mental illness, and 2 of those are biological, so they're innate and they're hereditary and they're passed down. But There are
Yeah.
seven different reasons why we might be in this situation, but how we can improve.
Yeah. I mean, even like, I mean, did it say like, I think we spoke on the last one, didn't we, about like the gut connected to the brain, and like even like supplement deficiencies can cause depression.
Well, yeah, it's like serotonin. 90% of your serotonin, which is your happy hormone, it's the thing that gets released when you do exercise, is based on your gut. And if you think about that just for a second and think, well, actually 90% of my happiness is in my stomach or is produced from my stomach, then by feeding, it's like putting, unfiltered chip fat oil into your car. It'll run, but it's not going to be the best and it'll stink like hell. Whereas if you're using like BP or a high quality fuel, it's going to run a lot more efficiently and for a much longer period of time. So it didn't necessarily talk about diet. I mean, one of the stories was they were in not India, where were they? Vietnam, and there was a chap or a farmer who was working in the paddy fields, and he suffered from really high levels of anxiety, like really high. And Johan went to the doctor and said, "Oh, how have you fixed this guy? Because this guy was now happy." He said, "Oh, we use antidepressants." He said, "Well, I didn't think there were antidepressants out here." And he said, "Yeah, antidepressants. Come, I'll show you." Took him outside and pointed to a cow. And Johan was like, "Oh, there must be that language breakdown here. I don't know what's going on." And the doctor explained that because the chap had experienced a mine whilst working in the paddy fields, whether it was himself, I can't remember, or someone that he was close to, every time he went to work in the paddy fields, his body went into fight or flight response, stress levels built up, and he started to feel really anxious, and he was unable to work efficiently and didn't feel great about himself. So they gifted him a cow, took him out of the paddy fields, changed his role completely, and he became he was milking the cow on a regular basis. And his anxiety and his depression lifted because he was taking care of something and he was producing something that benefited the community, and he was out of that environment where his body was feeling, constantly stressed and on edge. And that was their antidepressant,
Yeah, and I think people don't. I mean, like we said at the start, didn't we? Like environment, and I think people don't take it seriously enough and think like, oh, that can't work, because we're so programmed to having to put like a drug in our mouth to get us better. Do you know what I mean? Like, what did people do before these drugs didn't exist?
Yeah.
How did, if you go into like remote villages in say India, how do they deal with their sickness and their health and stuff like that? Organic turmeric, ashwagandha, all these roots that are grown, they're classed as medicine. And when we say food is medicine, again, people that don't kind of believe it or whatever. But if you go back hundreds of thousands of years into ancient times, that's what they did.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff now, but even back in Asia, they don't eat like they used to eat moth larvae or mothballs or something to do with moths. And it was part of a staple diet. But since then, the tastes have changed, and now people go, "Oh, I'd never eat that. That's what that's what our ancestors used to eat." But actually, there was a reason why it was being consumed, because it was naturally beneficial and it had certain things in it that were I couldn't say they were antioxidants, or I couldn't say they were antibacterial, whatever it might be. But like, I got chatted to a friend of mine, a guy called Dalton. He owns a vegan organic restaurant in Bournemouth called 12 Eatery. Oh, nice. It's been written about loads in a lot of the vegan guides, and I didn't know much about vegan food when he opened, but he taught me so much in terms of, organic I just thought was an airy fairy thing that you end up paying loads of money for. But he was like, "Well, do you realize that anything that's non-organic has been sprayed with pesticides? Pesticides kill insects, and it also affects the wildlife around it. Yet you're choosing to put that into your body." Like, think about the long-term effects that's having.
No, 100% agree. And it's like people go, and I know some things are more expensive, but a lot aren't. I mean, you pay like 30p or 50p extra. Some people don't want to do it but then they'll spend 150 quid on a night out on Friday on beer.
Yeah. It's the same with meat as well, isn't it? Like
But
everything's injected with hormones and steroids.
yeah, and it goes back to, though, understanding it before you get sick to learn and have to do something about it. Because I was like 23, 24. I was like, I'm like, organic? No. Well, why would I do that? Like, don't matter. Like, it until it affects you, or until you start reading about it seriously and start going, hold on a minute, yeah, there's a lot of sense in this. Then you won't do it, or you don't take it seriously. But no, it's definitely. I mean, I've talked about toxins before, and I think people don't understand when I talk about toxins. I mean, I've done some videos with. I have a sauna in my bedroom. Which helps me with pain, and I do a detox every single day. So I do like 30 minutes in there, and I sweat out. And when I talk about toxins, is like a lot of the reasons why people are so sick is the toxic overload. Eating foods, like you've said, for many, many, many years, and it's like filling a bin up with rubbish, and then that bin can't shut the lid anymore, and all the stuff just comes pouring out, and that's basically when people get sick.
Yeah.
The body can't. You've got to help your body detoxify. You know, naturally we detoxify through the liver, and then when we go for a wee. But if your detox pathways are blocked, that's when you start get build up, and then you're in trouble. So there's things like milk thistle that you can take, which is great for helping detoxify the liver.
Don't they put people, if you've ever done bodybuilding and you go on steroids for a period of time, I think they use milk thistle afterwards to help purge the body, so to speak.
Yeah, it's one of those ancient things that has been around for ages. But yeah, it's really good. There's so many things, isn't there? That's interesting. I mean, it's all. I just find it, and as well now. I mean, like I say, I don't preach. I just find that world very. It's my passion now. I love learning things about health, and even if I don't read something, I'm going to do it. I'll look at it and go, okay, that worked for that person. That might not work, or I'll try a little bit of that, or and that resonates with me. Yeah, I fancy doing that, or trying that, or taking that. And then I see from there, and I've done, God, I could write 2 books on the amount of things I've done. Like, trust me, and a lot of them haven't worked, and they've cost a lot of money, so I know how that feels. And yeah, just not everything works for every person. You've just got to be patient and try new things. But the problem is now, I think there's so much stuff on social media, isn't there? Like, there's these influencers going, oh, buy this drink, this ketone drink or whatever. And they don't know anything about health. They don't know what's in it or whatever. But because this model's got it and her body is like amazing, or whatever, oh, I want to look like that, I'm going to buy this drink.
Oh, don't even get me started.
But as you'll know, sometimes how you look doesn't show how you feel. So a lot of these people that look incredible, sometimes they're not actually healthy inside.
It's like fat stripping to become a bodybuilder. Like, once you bulked up.
Oh God, they're the most unhealthy. I mean, I've got a mate actually, and I always bloody message him. I mean, if you look, I'll send you pictures after on Instagram of him. But he's completely. I always take piss out of him, but he's so he loves it. He's so obsessed with bodybuilding and that, and he's got he does all these competitions, and his legs are bulging out, and his 6-pack's bulging out, and he does I think he got silver in the World Championships last year. But the stuff he's eating on his Instagram to keep him going, like a whole box of cereal, like Cocoa Pops and stuff. And I message him like, no, mate. He's like, I need it. And it's super interesting what people. I mean, he does eat a lot of healthy stuff as well, but he eats a lot of sugar because he said his body needs it for the lift.
For the lift, well, yeah, it's all about. But this is the thing that gets me about diet things is Instagram, fucking social media. Honestly, I swear to God, everyone. And we talk a lot to college students. So Adam Simmons and I have trained, over 200 students in the last 2 weeks on the subject of mental health. And one thing that I say to them is, don't believe everything you see on social media, because everyone, and I think it's probably worse. It's getting worse for blokes, as without generalizing, but. Women especially, they look on that and go, well, my ass doesn't look like that. I don't look like Kim Kardashian. But then it's all filters and falsities and diets. There's so many people out there selling diet plans, but the concept is so basic.
And I haven't even got any education on it.
No, exactly. They've just dressed it up well. They've marketed it well. But the concept is burn more than you eat. Reduce your heavy carbs and your high sugar intake, because what happens to that if you don't burn it? It just turns to fat. And remain active and exercise. Your heart needs to pump in order to be able to produce your calories. You can dress it up in 100 different ways, but the concept is so simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this a few times. I really feel for the younger generation, like the 19, 20-year-olds with social media and stuff, because if we struggle with it as 30-year-old men and women, they must, because it's addictive, isn't it? It must be really hard for them. It must be really hard for them.
They don't know any better. Like at least we had a life before all of this came.
I always say this to my sister. Yeah, we had the Nokia 3210s when we were 15, didn't we?
I had a Motorola, one of the old Motorola's with the screw tops, the bricks.
One of the lifty ones, the ones you lift up the top, and we could play on we'd play on Snake, wouldn't we? And stuff like that. I mean, I am so grateful for that. I mean, my cousin's like 9, and he's got a brand new iPhone and stuff. And he rang me the other day like, I was on my iPhone 6 hours yesterday. 6 hours.
I saw a stat recently about social media use with the younger generation now, and they spend, oh God, I don't
want to know.
Oh mate, when you look at it in comparison to things like sleeping or eating, it's like out of a list of 10 different things, social media use is the third biggest use of time at this moment. I say use of time, waste of time. Yeah. And it sounds like I'm hating, but there are some good stuff on social media. If you can get inspired, or it inspires you to change the way you live your life, or the ability to learn and to develop yourself and invest in yourself, then it's good. But
be clever who you follow and stuff. A lot of people I follow are like super positive people, like self-development people, like Tony Robinson, Jody Spend, all these people that you look at the video and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, I want to try that. I'll try that meditation tonight or whatever, or that motivation really helped me mentally.
Yeah, and do you know what? I've often thought about whether or not I start to change the direction of the podcast, or at least provide it with the next additional level, which is like inspiration, because I often get asked, how did I come about setting up the Burnt Chef Project? And it wasn't the hardest thing for me personally, and it's like yourself probably with the business, is committing and taking action, because you doubt yourself and you're afraid to put yourself above that parapet because of what might come back. But once it's the devil. Oh mate, isn't it just? Because, and again, I'm going off on a tangent, and we've already been talking for an hour and a half, but for those who are still listening now, but like
you can edit it, can't you?
I don't need to. I generally don't feel like I have to, but I think that we're taught at such an early age, do what your parents tell you, go to school, do what school tells you. If you're not got good grades, you're not going to make anything from your life. Invest, save your money, because one day you might need those savings. But we are taught as a culture to follow rules. And I don't mean about the laws are there for a reason. It's to protect the greater good of society and stop from harming people. But I think that once you learn that not everything you've always been told is right, there's so many opportunities. And I mean, look at myself. I gave up work 4 months ago to help an entire community of people across the world. Yeah. And I feel like I never ever thought that a year ago this was even capable. I didn't think I was able to do this. But I think if you spend time on developing yourself, on learning, and you have something that you feel passionate for or want to do, then fucking do it.
Yeah, because definitely.
The only person stopping you is you.
Yeah, there is. And you will, I think I read something I think it was like Cristiano Ronaldo or something, but he was saying like, whatever you do in life, you're going to get judged anyway. So, if you do what you want to do and you have a few haters, you have a people that talk about it, so what? And if they leave, they're not meant to be on your journey. I've realized with my massive transition in my life, I had to I had to change the direction of my social. Like, I couldn't go out anymore getting drunk on a Saturday night or meet up in the pub on Sunday. And I had to change my circle, and I lost some people and I gained some amazing people too. And the people that have stuck with me. And, I've got some incredible close friends. And then as I've followed my path, my truth, and what I believe in and how I want to live my life, I have met and some incredible people just come in. They just naturally come in. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to try and be anyone else. The right people that are meant for you will come to you if you follow and pursue your journey.
Again, this gets us onto another subject, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but the universe has a way of gravitating towards you. And it's like I said on a previous podcast, like, if you feel bad about yourself and you feel depressed, you can guarantee the first thing that will happen is when you step out that door is something will happen to you. You'll get splashed by that bus. You'll step in that dog poo.
Oh God.
And we've all been there. I mean, there's times in my periods of life where I've been quite heavily depressed, and everything happened to me. It was everyone else's fault, and I couldn't do right for doing wrong. But when it snowballs the opposite direction, it's amazing that the positive impact it has, and the people that suddenly grab, that fate would have it, that put you in your path, and the opportunities that arise. And I'm not saying that means that everyone should just stop being anxious or depressed and suddenly change their life around, because it does take work, and as we've discussed today, it takes trying different things. But the universe has a way of working with you or working against you.
100%. Like you just said, some people, are struggling that bad, they just can't do it, or they can't see the light. And I totally get that. I totally understand that. And, but, try and do it in your own time. And if you can just do little steps, start drawing, if you're so depressed, start drawing where you want to be in a year or 6 months, or write down, 2 things that you want to do that day. And then be, thank yourself for it. And I think gratitude's huge as well. I used to take so much stuff for granted. I used to moan about so much crappy little stuff. You know what I mean? If you have your health and you're happy and you have a warm bed at night, be grateful, man.
Yeah, because you haven't lived a life that hasn't had those luxuries. And it's easier said than done, because it's a matter of perception. But it's important to... Something I've learned recently is your internal monologue. Would you speak to your best mate like you speak to yourself? And a lot of us will be out there going, no, I wouldn't ever say the things I say to myself to my best mate, because that's just harsh. But I think if anyone's in the situation, be like, well, how do I change that? Talk to yourself like you're not yourself. Do you know what I mean? It says, what would you say to yourself if you weren't you? And would you give yourself would you cut yourself a bit of a break and say, I didn't manage to achieve that today, but it's all right, we'll try again tomorrow, mate. Like, let's go again, as opposed to going, this internal monologue.
I mean, depending how strong your demons are and those thoughts that come into your head. I mean, some people, it's just so hard to do that, isn't it? I mean, I found a good thing is like putting up things in your room, either above your bed or like as soon as you wake up, you see it. And just put little things up there, like, tell yourself you're the best. Tell yourself that you're amazing. Tell yourself, why should we be scared of that? Whatever you do for your job, if you're a pastry chef, write on the wall, I am the best pastry chef possible. I am going to be the best pastry chef possible.
Yeah.
And that just feeds yourself, and it is the power of the mind. And then it does help you get into there. And people that I've got there, they've been those people before. I think it's just that belief that you can be that person if you want to be that person.
It's the subconscious motivators that people, you might think that all these positive posters and affirmations don't do anything, but the mind. Oh my God, I've read so many studies, both on like how the brain changes when you have mental illness and stuff. But the mind is such a powerful tool that if you can utilize just these small tips, like we discussed when we were with Tom, Hopper and Sat, and it's something I still do now, is I write down 1 or 2 things I want to achieve in my life. I put it in my drawer and then I take it back out again and write down at the end. And every single day it changes, and it could be like solving world hunger, it could be like I don't know, writing a mental health policy. And I don't need to do anything with it, but writing it down. And I look back over the last 2 years, and there's things I've written in there that were so far-fetched back then, but they've been achieved,
Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah, ticking something off is definitely an amazing feeling, isn't it, when you've done something?
Self-achievement. But Kirk...
I think one last thing opposite to that, which I've started doing, is write down the things that are in your brain that you want to get rid of, right? Write them down, fold them up in a piece of paper, and then burn them and watch them burn. You have to do it outside, or just throw them in your fire. So if you've got like this thing that's like keeping bothering you, like I'm crap at this or whatever, write it down and throw it away. That's helped a lot for me.
Yeah. I underestimated the power of writing things down. I was always a digital guy, and putting them on emails and stuff, which also works. But I was inspired. Someone gave me a journal recently. It's just like top priorities, what went well, what didn't go well. And I started to use it, and just the writing down is so not just cathartic, but it's productive. I've actually ordered, I've called them mise-en journals. I've ordered a load of blank Burnt Chef journals with tips in there, just so that, because I do think that the power of writing things down, and whether you're disposing of bad things or keeping good things, I think the power of that, just that action, has such a positive effect on the brain. It's something that needs to be explored further, I think.
Definitely.
Kirk, one last question. I ask all my guests, and I'll let you go. And I think you've covered a lot of this already, but I'm just intrigued about your answer. Is if you were to know or to provide just some simple advice to an 18-year-old version of yourself, so if you knew now, or knew then, but what you know now, what would you say to yourself?
Oh God, 18. In life.
Just, I mean, things that you've learned. I mean, as I say, we've covered a lot of it already, but just to summarize it, like things that you know now that perhaps would have changed the things that you did or thought back then.
Okay, this is very. If you don't feel well, stop and talk to somebody. Get help. Don't just power through. Especially men, which more do it more than women. I think women are more, which is a great thing. They're more open to like being emotional or whatever. But if you feel shit, stop. Don't carry on, because it'll just get you 2 years later. So it's pointless.
That's the most hard hitting, and I thought Sat had it last week, but I think you've just taken over. I think that's the most hard hitting and to the point response I think I've had.
It's just it's personal. It's I don't want anyone to suffer or put their body through stuff that I have. So that's why.
What a great point to finish on. Kirk, mate, thank you ever so much for your time and for being so open and talking about your journey. And I look forward to learning more about things that could potentially benefit not just physical but mental well-being.
Yeah. We should do like an Instagram live or something, and we can talk. We could write down like 5 things that could help people every week or something, and that could be beneficial. I don't know, but yeah, I'm open to anything you need, any help. Just shout. I'm always here, and I love helping others and sharing knowledge. So and it's amazing what you're doing. So you should be super, super proud, man. Thank you.
I'm far again. Ego. I'm far from done. I'm far from my goal, but I appreciate. I'm continually humbled and surprised by the response that I get. So I think the Instagram live would be a good thing. Do you know what? I haven't done them since lockdown 1. I was thinking about that this morning. You remember that Instagram lives used to be a thing, but I think that's important. And it'll be nice to be able to open up a Q&A as well for people who might have some questions specifically for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll get it booked in. But Kirk, thank you ever so much, mate, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, take care. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks to Kirk for joining us. It was great to be able to sit and listen to his story and also his tips on being resilient and learning to adapt and overcome quite tough adversities. Join us next week as we meet another guest and we talk to them openly about well-being and mental health within the industry. Apologies for the sound quality on this one. Don't know what happened, but we'll make sure they're better in future. Cheers, take care, and see you soon.